Hey, Colts Nation, do you want peace of mind while surfing the internet and while also viewing our content safely? Well, now you can, thanks to our sponsor, Aura. It's no doubt, guys, with the internet becoming so massive and new information being put out there every single day, identity theft has become one of the biggest forms of threat in the world. It's important that you guys remain safe out there on the internet while doing all the things that you do. Let Aura be able to help you. Some of you may have things like Aura already, but this allows you to protect everything on all of your devices all in one place rather than having several different apps all at once, making it easier to track everything and helps your wallet. Aura monitors the dark web to protect your personal information. It checks all of your devices for malware, gives you guys one-click VPNs to help you when you're shopping online, and so much more. You can even get credit score checks and alerts for suspicious activities if something's going on with your cards. If you want to stop people from getting access to your personal information online, be sure to go to our sponsor, aura.com/bringthejuice, or scan the QR code and get a 14-day free trial and see for yourself the benefits Aura can provide for you. Allow Aura to protect you so you can get back to surfing the internet safely and enjoy your favorite Colts content creators.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guy, Cody, here, back for another episode, guys. And today I wanted to kind of talk about this DB room, right? We've been doing these different positional breakdowns. You know, we already did all the offense. We did the defensive line. We did the linebackers. And so I was originally going to do two separate videos, but just with life situations and, training camp coming up this week, I decided to kind of condense it down and just talk about all of the DBs in general with the Indianapolis Colts. And so the grand overview, when you look at this DB room right now, what you really see is a lot of youth and a lot of inexperience, especially at the cornerback room, right? I mean, really, you look at it, the only guy right now who has really any experience of substantial, value is Kenny Moore. And Kenny Moore's obviously entering a contract year. Didn't have a great year last year, voiced some of his frustrations, but back on a contract year with Indianapolis. And he really is, the only guy in this cornerback room right now with any sort of NFL experience. Dallas Flowers would probably be the second guy. He started a couple games last year, but he's only going into year number 2. So overall, an overarching look at this cornerback room, especially, Kenny Moore is so valuable in this room for what he can teach some of these young guys, right? I did a indispensable list a couple days ago, probably like last week, I think it was. And I failed to put Kenny Moore on this list, but I honestly think the more and more I've thought about it, I might throw Kenny Moore on the list of most indispensable just because he's the only guy with any valuable experience. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what Kenny Moore does this year. Does he have a bounce back year from last year? Does he earn another contract with Indianapolis, or is this more of like an audition for him for next year and moving forward? So Kenny Moore definitely is the veteran of this cornerback room, no question. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what kind of leadership role he takes on here and kind of like how he bounces back potentially from last year's lackluster year at corner. So Kenny Moore is the first guy I want to talk about for all those reasons. And then obviously want to talk about the Colts' first pick they had on defense this year, cornerback Juju Prince out of Kansas State. He missed all of the spring with that wrist surgery he had. Now, hopefully he's good to go for training camp and ready to roll. We'll see if he misses any time at the beginning, but he should be pretty, from what all we've speculated, he should be pretty good to go for most of training camp, if not all of it. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does. But guys, strictly from kind of what his role will be, with the Isaiah Rodgers suspension, I mean, he's immediately going to be thrust into that number one outside corner position. And he's going to have some opportunity to learn kind of trial by fire a little bit this year, right? He's obviously got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's a typical, kind of prototypical Gus Bradley corner, right? He's 6'2", over 200 pounds. He's a very intimidating, physical, athletic guy out there. So he's got all the traits you're looking for in a corner. But, obviously with any rookie, there's going to be some growing pains. So the big question is, how does Juju Prince look, and how valuable was maybe missing the spring? And how does he look in training camp? I'm sure there's going to be some rust that he's going to have to knock off. And he's going to kind of be thrown in there, kind of like Rocky Sin was his rookie year. He kind of got thrown in there, and for better or for worse, he had to kind of grow with it. And I thought Rock looked good that year. And, Juju Prince is even more physically gifted than even Rock was. So, how does he respond? How does he come back whenever he gets burned on a play? Because it's probably going to happen. How does he respond the next play, right? Where's his mental state at? It'll be interesting. Former hometown kid, grew up rooting for Indianapolis. So we'll see on Juju Prince, but he certainly is going to have a big role here, I think, in year number one, especially on day one, it seems like. And obviously the Colts drafted a couple other corners as well. Darius Rush out of South Carolina. That's going to be another interesting one. The Colts took him in the 5th round, and a lot of people, including myself, thought, man, that's a steal to get Darius Rush where you got him. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what his role is. I mean, he's going to be the one, I think, that I'm the most interested to see kind of what his role is, because I could see it being from, a special teams guy all the way to potentially the number 2 outside corner, right, if Kenny Moore stays in the slot. So Darius Rush kind of has, for me, the most wide variety of potential roles here at corner. He's going to be competing with guys like Dallas Flowers, Jalen Jones, Tony Brown. All these different guys are kind of going to be competing for that number 2 outside corner. It'll just be interesting to see, how does the pecking order go? Because, Darius Rush, very similar in build when it comes to the physical size, the athleticism, all those sorts of profiles. So he's very similar to the kind of corner that the Colts are looking for there. And, does he have potentially an extended role here early with just how thin the position is right now? So that'll be one that I'm really interested to see as well. All signs point to he's going to have a decent role, and we'll see kind of does that expand, as training camp goes along. And that's going to be one of the position battles I'm really watching. I already mentioned Dallas Flowers, who I'm going to be watching as well. Jalen Jones, the Colts drafted a 3rd corner in the 7th round. He's not as physically gifted as the first 2 guys they drafted, but he still is, and he played in the SEC. And it's crazy. He's played more snaps than both Rush and Brents combined, but he's still a younger player. So Jalen Jones playing at Texas A&M. He's got a lot of experience. He's played against a lot of good competition, so maybe that serves him well. And it seems like every year the Colts draft, one of those DBs in the later rounds, they turn out to actually perform well. So maybe Jalen Jones is, one of those guys that does that again, or maybe he's more like a Nate Hairston type of guy who maybe has some sort of role, but really doesn't do a whole lot. So 7th round pick, he can't go wrong. He's going to be right in there in competition with Rush, with Dallas Flowers, with Tony Brown as well, who's another guy, been a special teams guy. He's played a little bit of snaps for you, but nothing substantial. So the cornerback room is going to be very intriguing, probably the most intriguing one on the defensive side of things when it comes to who's going to be the starters, who's going to see the playing time. So cornerback room is definitely interesting. And then if we switch to looking at the safety room, you talk about Julian Blackmon, who made the switch to strong safety this year. So he'll be your starting strong safety. And then you have Rodney Thomas from last year who, talk about, a guy that came out of nowhere. My goodness, nobody expected Rodney Thomas to do what he did in year number 1. He kind of came out of nowhere, and, with everything going on with the Nick Cross situation, he definitely got some more looks. And, now with Blackmon switching over to strong safety, he has pretty much the whole free safety position to himself. And it'll be interesting to see, where does Nick Cross kind of factor into this as that 3rd safety? Who is he competing with? I would think we would say he's competing with Julian Blackmon for that strong safety position. But, I think we could all probably say Blackman's probably going to start over him at this point. So, a lot of young safeties in here, Blackmon being the oldest of the 3. But he's a guy that really is going to be interesting to watch because, different position. He played a little bit of corner last year in the slot when Kenny Moore was banged up. So he played a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, which he actually said, helped him last year. So, how does that look for Julian Blackmon playing a new position? How does this look with all these young corners, right? Because Blackman's the oldest guy but he's still on his rookie deal as well. So, he brings some experience, but he's going to have to step up in a whole different way with this safety room. And then you have guys like Trevor Denbow, who, got injured last year, especially with Daniel Scott now being on the IR. Do the Colts elect to keep 4 safeties? If so, kind of who is that guy that they elect to keep out of kind of some of the other guys that they brought in? So all that to say, guys, I know that was not like a super in-depth look. I mean, I just wanted to kind of touch on it because, like I said, training camp's coming up pretty quickly. Everything's coming up. But I wanted to finish this series out, kind of give a brief overview here when it comes to this DB room. Like I talked about, a lot of unknowns at this point with this, especially with this corner room. So a lot of young pieces here, a lot of talent, certainly. There's no question about that. But how does this talent perform, And there's probably going to be some growing pains with this young group, especially at the corner position. So that's kind of my look here, guys, at the DB room, looking at the young corners for Indianapolis, the young safeties for Indianapolis. So let me know, guys, what your thoughts are overall on this defensive back room that really had an overhaul this offseason, when, they traded away Stephon Gilmore, lost Brandon Facyson onto free agency, and then obviously Isaiah Rodgers with that suspension. So it's been a position that definitely had a lot of changes this offseason, and they kind of elected to go with the youth movement a little bit more. They got rid of 2 guys in Gilmore, and Facyson, who was a little bit older, Gilmore a little bit older of the 2, but they elected to go younger, and certainly going to see probably a drop in production because Gilmore was fantastic for Indianapolis last year. Isaiah Rodgers obviously is a really good player, was a player, I should say, before obviously the suspension and all that stuff. So the Colts have lost really, and Rodney McLeod. I can't even forget Rodney McLeod either. So the Colts lost 4 guys in this DB room that played significant roles for them last season. So they lost a lot of experience in this room. And so I don't think that can be understated how important that is. So there's not really like that veteran guy in there like there has been in years past. Julian Blackmon and Kenny Moore, I guess, would be those guys. But there's not a Stephon Gilmore in there. There's not, a Rodney McLeod in there. I would say definitely it's going to be interesting to see how do these guys grow. They still have guys that have played some snaps, but they don't have guys like a Gilmore, who was a former, defensive player of the year, or Rodney McLeod, who played, and won a Super Bowl. Like, they don't have those type of guys on the roster. So let me know, guys, what your thoughts are overall on this very young and very different looking DB room from where it was a year ago. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate all the support. Guys, training camp, like I said, is coming up very soon. So my kind of thought is I will finish up with the special teams, and then we'll get into all training camp content. Training camp, I think the first practice is Wednesday, so it's coming very quickly. So we're going to get this stuff up for you. We're going to have a training camp preview, all that good stuff. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys are the best. And as always, guys, go Colts.